Okay, you're good to go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Might take a few moments for individuals to join us. See, we already have a question. And just to be certain, Haley, maybe if you can jump in again and just let me know, can people still see the correct screen? I just want to make sure I'm sharing what I should be. Perfect. Yep. Okay, so now I can see the question. So fantastic. Sage, thanks for your question. For Mount Allison, our application deadlines, technically there is no deadline, but there is kind of an important deadline if you want to be considered for scholarships and financial aid. So that's on March 1st. That's a very common deadline in Atlantic Canada. You'll see almost every university in Atlantic Canada use that March 1st deadline for scholarship consideration. But for just general admission, for Canadian students, the application remains open right up until the start of the term, either in the fall or the winter term. Not that we recommend waiting that long to apply, but it is possible still to apply, really, even in the first week of the term. So, yeah, but I'd always recommend trying to follow those deadlines for financial aid and scholarships, because that's how you're going to cut into your university costs. So it's great that we have that. And Haley, it's great that you're here. There might be some others who join us along the way and possibly not, but that's okay. I think we have a few other viewers I can see. And, I could have spent this presentation talking about Mount Allison University specifically, and I will do that a little bit throughout the presentation. It is where I attended. It's where I work. I've been part of this university community for close to 15 years. I'm coming into my 14th year. As an employee, so I guess as part of the community even longer than that, so almost 20 years really as a student. So I've had a lot of different experiences here. I've traveled across the globe meeting and interacting with prospective students, and through all those experiences, I was an individual that was fortunate to be awarded one of the top scholarships here at Mount Allison that was really geared towards students who were widely involved, not just in their academics, but in their various involvements. So in high school, I was kind of that student that was really trying to do a little bit of everything. Certainly played a lot of sports and different athletics, and I'm a competitive soccer player, and I played on Mount Allison's team here, but I got involved in a lot of other things. So I thought I would use this opportunity, knowing I was going to be speaking with prospective students. Some of you may be familiar with Mount A, maybe not, maybe just kind of curious about, being an effective student leader wherever you choose to go. So what I wanted to use my presentation for, rather than telling you all the great things about Mount Allison, which, there are many, I thought that this would be something a little bit more value added. So my topic today is all about staying on top of staying involved. It's advice for effective student leadership. So with that in mind, why don't we jump into it? Now let's see, make sure I can change there we go. So, the question really comes to mind. What is leadership? And it's not an easy, definition. I've actually studied leadership at the university level in academic courses, trying to get a sense, an idea of what this is. What is this thing that we call leadership? I think there's lots of different definitions. There's maybe not necessarily one right or wrong definition. There's lots of different ways that people can be leaders. So we're going to explore this kind of question as we go through a little bit, and I'll give you some insights that I've kind of gleaned through my time in academia, but also just as a team leader here at Mount Allison on our admissions team, and kind of the realities of living leadership every day. Sometimes when we think about leadership, we think of a leader and, individuals maybe following that leader. I think perhaps that's maybe a more traditional idea of what leadership is. But I might suggest that is not necessarily what maybe the current view of leadership is. Now, if you're wondering why I've used ducks here, if anyone has ever spent any time in Sackville, New Brunswick, where Mount Allison University is located, we're a bit of a duck-obsessed town. We are on the beautiful Tantramar Marshes, one of the many great wetlands across the country of Canada. So there's a lot of migrating waterfowl in this part of the world. So there tends to be a lot of duck references in our town, but that's why. So I guess the question, another, does leadership require a title or position? Do you have to be a director? Do you have to be a president or a vice president? Do you have to be on an executive? Do you have to be a board member? Or can you just be an individual? So I would argue that I don't think leadership does require a title or a position. In many ways, I think it's a lot more about taking an action rather than having kind of a label. So through some of my studies, these are some things that I had kind of pulled out that I thought were useful. And this is coming from a certain text here, Exploring Leadership of College Students Who Want to Make a Difference. And really the idea of leadership as a collaborative process. It takes many people. It involves many participants. It's complex. It's dynamic. There is no best theory for it. It really, at the end of the day, is driven by the relationships you form and the relationships you're able to develop. You think of kind of moving a project forward, whether that be a group project in your school, or maybe you have some, task within your work division that you're trying to accomplish, or maybe, as a university, a whole institution as a goal, you might have some kind of strategy laid out and you're trying to reach that. Well, that's going to involve a whole lot of people. And the more you have people working together in tandem and having strong relationships, the easier that becomes. And so I think, there's fewer places in the world where leadership and the process of leadership is really better exemplified than on a university campus. Sometimes we think of university as, faculty members, professors, and students, but myself, having worked at a university in a position that kind of requires me to interact with almost every individual on campus in some way, as recruiting and admission people, recruitment and admission people, we have to have a little bit of knowledge in everything. So it's given me good insight to all the different types of individuals, professions, basically micro industries that exist within a university campus. So you can think of anything from those in a facilities management who are managing the buildings, helping our institutions to stay warm in the winter and stay cool in the summer. You can think of the dining services staff that are making sure that students are fed every day, the custodial staff. There's a lot of individuals here beyond professors, students, and maybe kind of more academic staff. And so it just gives you a real opportunity when you're on a university campus to interact with people from all walks of life, individuals at all stages of their life. And if you're open-minded and curious and keen to get to know those people and to, learn from them, there's a whole lot that you can learn on a university campus outside of the classroom. So what I kind of hope to provide to you all today is perhaps a more comprehensive view on what an effective campus leader can be, some honest tips, advice through my own experiences, good and bad, and I've had many good and many bad, ideas, some things for you to kind of marinate on, meditate on as you reflect and continue to develop what leadership is ultimately going to mean to you, because it might mean something different to you than it will to me or to the person, the other 15 individuals here viewing today. Everybody's going to have their own kind of idea about what leadership is for them, and that's okay. But first, let's get a little bit more introduced so you know who you're speaking with, or who is speaking at you. And I will answer some of these questions as we go along. So, but first, just an idea about who I am. So some funny pictures, maybe. As I was a little closer to your age, closer to high school age, you can see me down in the corner here with my graduation photo. Well, when I let my hair grow out, this is what happens. I have quite a big afro. And I had a goal to have the biggest afro on the wall. I think I got it. But this is more me today. I think I'm even wearing the same shirt as my headshot photo. But some of the things I like to do. So certainly I'm an employee here at Mount Allison University. It's a big part of my life. I spend a lot of my time doing my job. But it's not how I would necessarily define myself or, identify as being an employee at Mount Allison. It's part of me. Some of the things that I get the most enjoyment and fulfillment out of are my kind of involvement in youth sport. I've always been a longtime soccer player, and now that I'm getting a bit older in age and less competitive in my play, I'm trying to give back to the game by getting involved as a coach. I've been coaching since the age of 15. I'm 36 as of yesterday. So, almost half my life or more has been spent kind of coaching youth in soccer. But I've also gotten involved in a varying levels of kind of sport organization boards and the soccer club level at kind of the regional level with our varsity program here at Mount A. So that's something, again, I spend a lot of my time doing and something I get a lot of fulfillment out of. I also, as a hobby, maybe a way to express ourselves is something that's important. And so how I've kind of gotten involved over the years is doing that is writing poetry and lyrics, and even done a little hip hop in my time. So this is me performing at one of our local restaurants. And I did that a lot around Mount Allison's campus as a student. I won an award for the Solo Artist of the Year here at Mount A. I even got to open for Classified, one of our famous East Coast Canadian artists here when he came to campus. So that's something I still do. It's something that helps me, get through my busy days and all the different roles I take on. Sometimes it's that moment at the end of the night where I find some self-expression that really gives me a lot of fulfillment and joy. So I encourage students to kind of find those things. When you go to university, if you have those aspects of yourself, don't give them up. There's lots of ways to continue to pursue your passions beyond what you're studying. Maybe you're studying a biology or a biochemistry degree, hoping to go to med school, but you've always played the piano or you've always gotten involved in drama studies. You can continue to do those things. And certainly at Mount Allison, we really encourage that sort of thing. Let me jump into a few of these questions just so I can get through them and make sure we don't run out of time. Definitely lots of law-related programs at Mount A. So, the philosophy, politics, and economics program is probably their closest to a pre-law program, if you had to call it such. But really, you can do any undergraduate program and go into law school. So you might want to think about the type of law you want to do. Maybe environmental law. You might want to do an environmental studies program. If you want to go into family law, maybe a sociology program. If you want to go into business law, maybe a commerce program. But I think philosophy, political science, they've always been good foundational programs for that. Acceptance rate. So that's kind of a funny one in Canada. We don't tend to have really low or high rejection rates. If you meet the academic grades, you'll generally get admitted to university. It really gets more competitive around scholarships. What's it like studying on the East Coast? I'm going to hopefully give you some of that insight as I go through the presentation, but I'd ultimately just say the East Coast is fantastic. People are incredibly friendly here. A lot of our universities focus on undergraduate studies, so it's all about kind of that first experience at university, and then afterwards students go really all over the world. But it's a nice, friendly, welcoming environment where we certainly have a lot of fun, but we have some excellent, universities, Mount A being one of them. Okay, I'll keep on with the presentation. I'll answer some of the other questions shortly. So when you think about leadership, kind of getting us back on task here, there is a science to leadership, certainly. There's certain things that you could kind of predict or assume, some of the common kind of things, but I really think there's also an art to leadership. It's not necessarily an exact science. It's really best practiced and not simply envisioned. You can put it all in the paper, but until you get there and you're doing it, it doesn't always work out as planned. And that's kind of part of it, practicing the actual act of doing it and what you learn from that process. And then you kind of reflect and change. So you're always learning, you're applying it, you're reflecting, you're adjusting. In short, you're kind of always fine tuning. If you're not fine tuning your process, you maybe aren't doing leadership right. But that also means you're probably not always going to get it right every single time, and that's okay. It's a lot about that kind of growth and learning from the things that might have went wrong for the next time around. And I think as students, that's kind of important too, because you're in kind of, safe environments to be able to make mistakes, in your high school environment, in your university. You gain a lot of the skills that you're going to take with you into your later life. But, if you mess up something on a university campus or in your student run project, it's not necessarily going to be the end of the world. But when we think about kind of the common things that you might expect to see in a leader, someone, who's an effective campus leader, certainly people that are respectful, they have respectful communication. If you're going to try to, approach the president of a university to try to listen to you and hear your opinion or, your idea for making some kind of change, well, usually going and screaming outside of that president's, office door might not get the ear of the president as well as if you, write a tactful email. Being empathetic, someone who kind of understands and feels kind of can relate to other individuals. This is really important. You're going to have to, again, in that kind of idea of relationships, you're going to have to work with lots of different types of individuals, and often people who might not be exactly similar to you. University campuses draw in lots of different perspectives, individuals from all over the globe. So it's important to at least be empathetic, understand. Oh, now I'm going into the dark. I'm in my office and my lights have shut off on me, but that's okay. So, ultimately being strategic, this is a really important one. If you have kind of a long-term goal in mind, it's not necessarily going to happen in the first action you take. You might have to have that long-term strategy. You might have to write it out and get an idea of those different pieces that are going to be involved in getting you to where you want to ultimately be. So you have to be strategic and you have to think kind of long-term. Being a good listener, that old kind of adage, you were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. I think that's good advice. Again, you can learn so much if you just listen to the other individuals around you on a university campus. There's so many intelligent individuals, so many people who have lots of varied experience. So if you're kind of open to listening and the next point, kind of open-minded to, consider those different perspectives, I think that's really going to aid you come the time when you're ready to speak. You're ready to let your opinion be heard. So being critical, it doesn't mean that we can't be critical of one another's ideas or critical of policies or decisions or approaches. All universities, no place is going to be perfect. Even Mount Allison, that I've come to love, and I really love this community. I think we do so many things so well. It doesn't mean that I don't, think sometimes there are things we could be doing better. Or the university might be falling a little short in certain areas that we feel could be improved. And I think our students are generally incredibly critical, and are not shy to let those criticisms be known. But again, that's something we kind of encourage and promote here in our university community. We want students to develop those critical capacities. That's really part of, a strong liberal education, is developing those critical thinking facilities and being able to think for yourself and look at something and analyze it. So, the last two, being disciplined and motivated, I think these are certainly very important. There's a lot of distractions that can happen on a university campus. And so staying disciplined, maybe you have others relying on you if you're in kind of a leadership role or a position. And there might be that opportunity where, some fun is coming your way, but you have to kind of make that decision. Okay, I have others counting on me. I said I was going to do something. I'm going to ensure I do that, while also being disciplined on top of your own studies. So making sure you're kind of carving out good time in your schedule to make sure you can get all those things done. But sometimes it does mean having to say no to the socializing. I think that's a reality for a lot of effective student leaders. Not to say that I didn't have a lot of fun and social time during my university experience. I certainly did. But sometimes it's knowing when to play and when to work. So yeah, and that all just kind of comes down to being motivated. Now, sure, I could probably go on and we could sit here and talk today about lots of different things that students are kind of common traits in leaders. But I think, again, all these skills are things that are going to help you in developing and maintaining relationships. And that's so key. So I think some of the things you want to ask yourself, everybody's going to be different. What passions do you have? What things are important to you as you're coming into university? What are the experiences that have kind of shaped you in high school, the involvements you've gotten into? So when you come onto campus, maybe you are really passionate about, environmental justice. Maybe you're really passionate about social justice. Maybe you're really passionate about, mental health advocacy. There's so many things that we can be passionate about and choose to do. You maybe can't invest your time into everything. And again, that's okay. But you want to know, what is your focus and how are you trying to make change? What are you trying to kind of accomplish right from the time you first step foot on a campus? I think it's good to ask yourself that question before you come, beyond getting a degree. What else are you looking to do at this university that you've chosen to attend? So that might be within your institution, remembering the importance of respectful communication, knowing your community members. A place like Mount Allison, we have 2,300 students and, only 5,000 individuals in our town of Sackville. It's the kind of place where you can't be anonymous. People get to know you. Your character is important. And if you rub people the wrong way by being a little bit of a jerk, people are going to remember that. And so I would always just encourage you to keep that in mind. These are people you might be spending the next 4 years of your life with. But, going beyond your institution, thinking kind of bigger picture. So externally, in your local region, every university that you attend is going to have, a town or a city or some kind of location that university is in. Who are the change makers? Who are the decision makers in that region, in that town, in the province that you're attending? If you're in Canada, maybe a state, if you're in the United States, somewhere else. And I would say our students, and if you are that type of student that's motivated and kind of possesses all these traits I've overviewed, think big. Don't be shy. We have students that have, met with the Prime Minister of Canada and advocated for, things that are important to students. We've had people that have taken their message internationally and gone, and done development work and really made a change in a region that, that was really needing it. So think big. That's what I'd always encourage people to do. And there's lots of people on a university campus that can help you take those goals a little bit further. So then also within yourself and others, that kind of idea of us shifting our mindset. So I see there's lots of questions. I'll go through a few more here just so I don't miss you. So the dorms and student community, this is where you'll kind of find your first friends. It's a really family-oriented atmosphere at Mount A. I met students from all over the world in my residence right in my first week, and we do a really great orientation here. So, to the next question, campus life. During that orientation, you're going to see all the different clubs and societies and student groups and activities and kind of what's available for students. You can kind of sign up to different mailing lists, but there's over 110 clubs and societies on our campus, tons more opportunities in town to volunteer and to get, part of different groups that are in the town of Sackville. So there's a lot to do, and Mount A is known to have a really robust campus life. Almost everybody's doing something beyond their studies. How did you choose to be part of which extracurriculars to be part of and which not in high school? So again, a lot of it comes down to, what you enjoy. I wouldn't encourage anyone to go into activities that they're not, taking any fulfillment or enjoyment out of, maybe just to add it as a resume item or a checkbox. I don't think we end up doing the best work or, getting the most fulfillment when we do those sorts of things. So try to pick out the things that you enjoy. But beyond maybe enjoy, maybe see where you can make a difference, kind of that knowledge of self, knowing your skill set. How can you make a difference? Well, maybe you notice that there's kind of a lack of something in your campus or your high school community, and that you have a skill set that could help, that could better that situation. That might be something worthwhile to give your time to as well. Thank you for the happy belated birthday note. We do have all of our programs are 4-year, not 2-year. You'll usually find the 2-year programs in colleges and the certificates. Lots of scholarships. Mount A was the top ranked undergraduate school in all of Canada for scholarships and financial aid. And really all you have to do is apply, tell us all about yourself, and you're basically going to be considered for everything. Pre-pharmacy, I think chemistry, biochemistry are always strong foundational programs if you want to go into pharmacy. And one of our other universities in the region has a great pharmacy program at the kind of master's graduate level, Dalhousie University. So a lot of our students will go there, but you could go to any pharmacy program after a good chemistry, biochem degree at Mount A. And since Mount's in a smaller school, how does this impact research opportunities? So, in a lot of ways, it impacts it positively because we don't have graduate or master's, PhD students on our campus. Our professors who are all doing high-level research are going to be looking to undergrad students. So you can get those experiences in undergraduate research very early on in your experience, and it's not uncommon for our students to be published on papers with their professors as co-authors by the time they're finished in undergrad. And that usually sets you up pretty well for grad school. All right, so back to our presentation. I think, as long as it clicks over for me. Oh, I had clicked off. There we go. So the idea here, emotionally intelligent leadership. So this is something I studied a lot, and something that's really coming into the fore. Employers, everybody's kind of looking for this idea, this emotional intelligence. And so I thought this infographic, something that will be very familiar to everyone in my and generations younger than me, the Wi-Fi signal, but you kind of think of like signal strength. So it starts with maybe a little bit closer, that idea, the consciousness of yourself, knowing your own abilities, emotions, perceptions. How well do you know yourself? That's important. Once you have a good sense of yourself, you maybe start to think about the consciousness of others. Okay, well, how do I fit into this team environment, this environment of individuals? Who else around me, has different skills or similar skills to me, who is like-minded, who is maybe different, but that kind of consciousness and awareness of those around you. But perhaps the most important one, I would argue the most important one, is really this consciousness of context. So it's being able to kind of go into any particular situation and kind of have a sense of what that context is. So it might be very different, on a Mount Allison's campus of 2,300 students that's undergrad focused to, say, a University of Toronto, experience, one of the biggest universities in Canada and one of the biggest downtown, city environments in the country. It's going to just be a very different student experience. So how you approach campus leadership on a Mount A versus a U of T could be very different. And so you being able to kind of understand that context and be able to situate yourself in whatever place you find yourself, that's really important. So some advice, what I'm hoping to ultimately leave you with here today, as I know we're coming toward the end of the presentation, so that exactly that, what I was just speaking to, you got to kind of learn the lay of the land before you maybe start shouting. So, if I come into a Mount A environment, this is the type of environment that I saw the university president walking down the street, and he got to know me on a first name basis as a soccer player. He was a soccer fan. He would come up to watch the games. Before I knew it, we were, first name basis. That might not happen in other environments. So in that kind of environment, again, it was important to leave positive impressions, to take those opportunities, to know that you could, meet with some of those more senior administrators, and, how you act in a small community, that reputation that you kind of develop as a student. Are you someone who's serious? Are you someone that's maybe goofing off a little bit more? And, of course, there's a time and a place for everything. But I think if you kind of get a sense, okay, what is this environment that I'm in, and who are the decision makers? Who are the people that ultimately, I want to be getting their attention, and, who can help me in making the change that I'm looking to make? That might be a president. It might be, a staff member. It might be a senior student that's kind of already established on campus. Identify those campus stakeholders and make that tactful contact. So once you know who those individuals are, I think it's useful to kind of go and introduce yourself. Maybe it's your professor in a class. I got a lot of opportunities, speaking of research, just by raising my hand and going to see my professors after about assignments. They all post their office hours at a place like Mount A. You can literally drop in and see them and talk about your assignments, and they love it when you do. So making that contact, letting them know I was a serious student, led to them offering me job opportunities after my first year. Kind of taking a professional approach to things and taking yourself seriously. So again, we're maybe as young people, some people might not know, the inclination is that, young people aren't serious. They are coming to university to, party and have a good time. In my experience, that has certainly not been the case. I think students, like I said, know when to have fun, but most students that are coming in here are quite focused and quite motivated and have already done some impressive things, in their high school careers, and then come into university looking to take it to the next step. So I think if you kind of do professionalize your approach and take yourself seriously, others will as well. But like I said, know when to not take yourself too seriously, and also find those times where you can kind of, find those areas of fulfillment, whether it's self-expression through writing poetry or, playing an instrument or whatever else you do to kind of blow off steam. I think there's times at university where, we can kind of also, be okay with having fun and relaxing and not always being so serious. Have allies, but, a phrase I like to use is don't always hang with the choir, this kind of preaching to the choir, playing off that a little bit. If you hang around always with the same people who have a very similar idea or mindset to you, I think that's good. You find your people, you find people that you can relate to. And I definitely found those people at Mount A that we would be able to relate to one another and kind of see things in the same way. And that was useful, but at the same time, if I only surrounded myself with those individuals, I probably wouldn't be growing much. I probably wouldn't be learning a whole lot. So I think, again, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, someone who might be very different than you. Like one of my roommates that I lived off campus with was a very, conservative individual who went to an all private boys high school in Toronto, and I was, more of a liberally minded person, went to a large public high school in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. In some ways we had very different backgrounds and approaches to things, but we found things that we related on. And I actually, to this day, he's one of my best friends, someone I stay in touch with often. And even though we have differing opinions, we respect each other, and I think that's important, and we listen to each other. So, another thing that I think is important is kind of seeing value in the task. So yes, we all want to get that notch in our resume. We all want to get the experience. We all want kind of things in our, immediacy culture. We want things to happen fast. But sometimes it's that act of doing it, what you're going to learn through the process of actually working through the hard task itself. There's so much to be gleaned from that, and that grit you kind of develop as a student when you, push yourself through the challenge. And that's what's going to lead to those long-term gains. If you can seek out and attempt to understand difference, again, this is a great opportunity coming to university to be able to do that. There'll be no other time in your life where you're going to have so many different perspectives and individuals from so many different places all together. It's just, you don't find that later in life. That's what people, reminisce about the best 4 years of their life when they start to reflect back and know what you kind of had at university. So I think trying to take advantage of that and get to know those other individuals. Like I said, you don't always have to agree, but at least you might learn something. Think twice before clicking send. This is certainly a mistake I've made in the past when you get a little too riled up, a little too heated, and you want to send that email. And you know what? I recommend writing the email. I like writing the email when I'm feeling that. But I've learned sometimes it's best not to send the email, and sometimes it's best to sleep on it and come back to it the next day. And, you might make a few little edits, maybe a little change in tone. And I would advise that, because sometimes that can be that one email that's how someone's going to remember you, when it really, in hindsight, doesn't end up being that big of a deal. And now you've kind of impacted that relationship. Again, that was really important. So I think there's ways to express your frustrations, grievances, but to, again, do it tactfully and respectfully. Take opportunities to both mentor and be mentored. I think I myself probably could have done a little bit more, been a bit more open into the being mentored. This is something I've learned maybe a little bit later in my life. I'm always happy to have been that student. Oh yes, I'll show you the ropes, I'll help you. Always willing to give my time to someone else, but maybe having this idea, I got it figured out. I don't need help. Well, of course, we all need help, and as I've learned in my later life, my professional life, individuals, I've gained so much by talking with people who have great experience and ultimately know more than I do. So, it's all about kind of certainly leading, but also knowing that there are opportunities when you can follow and you can learn a lot from the process of being maybe second, third, fourth, or lower in command. If you have time, do it now, not later. It's that whole procrastination piece. And this is so hard when you're a university student, but it's really important. If you have that ability to knock that thing out that needs to get done, it's only going to get harder later when all your friends finish their activities and they are encouraging you to do this. If you have that free moment in your day, even though you might want to throw your face into the pillow, I advise, if you want to move the needle forward, do it now, not later. Use your resources, know when to ask for help. We all do need it. There's so many resources on a university campus. More and more universities are dedicating resources to, specific staff that are there to guide you through your process, whether it's in career preparation, your academics, your wellness and your mental health. So seek out those individuals, maybe take a look through the staff directory and kind of know who exists. You never know when you're going to need it, but when you need it, it's nice to know. So stay humble, stay hungry, stay happy. Not always easy, but those are things I always try to do. Regardless of if I'm in a position of a president in my soccer club, for me, it's all about the people around me and recognizing and appreciating others, knowing that, I can't get things done without that team around me. So kind of staying humble, regardless of what position you're in, knowing that you can always learn. Staying hungry, that's that idea. There's a lot of, unfortunately, problems in our world, social problems, environmental problems, and what it might be. But if you stay hungry, you're that kind of individual that has that goal to better, causes. That's that kind of staying hungry and always just kind of keeping at it. Staying happy is that kind of self-care piece, the fulfillment. I think it's important. You'll hear it a lot about kind of the idea of burnout, especially kind of activist burnout, individuals that are constantly kind of putting themselves in the way of those causes, putting themselves out for other people. That's great. And those are good things to do. But when you do it over a long period of time, consistently, it can get difficult. So you got to try to find those moments where you can find your happiness. So that's bringing me pretty close to the end of my presentation. A quick little story is just one thing that I'm kind of proud that we did here at Mount Allison. We were kind of recognizing the university doing a little bit of too much talking the talk and not walking the walk when it came to reducing our carbon and emissions output. And so we were not seeing, there was kind of a big divestment movement happening, and the university was not making that decision to fully divest from fossil fuels. So we kind of, as students, came together, and we had a little bit of a rebel-rousing professor who decided to bring us all together. We did a strategic issues course and studied Mount Allison University and the different sectors of the university and how each one could ultimately reduce their kind of emissions output. We put that strategy together. We spent a whole term working up on kind of a strategy document, and we ultimately presented it to our university president and his executive team, and we got an audience. We were able to have them sit down, and ultimately they agreed. They thought it was a good idea, and I got to actually write an emissions reduction policy as a senior student with senior administrators of the university that's still in place today. And we've been kind of baselining our reduction each year from that. But some other things we chose to do is we levied a fund of all of our students, pay $10, which is still going on today. Every year, part of your student fees, if you come to Mount Allison, is going to go into the Green Investment Fund. And ultimately what that does is it's a fund that individuals in the community, whether at the university or in the Sackville or in the broader region, are able to apply for funding for their own carbon reduction projects that are happening, whether they be small scale or large scale. It's funding available for those sorts of things. So it's something rather, okay, the university's not divesting, well, we're going to invest in different groups that are trying to make a difference. And so all those things, I think, are stuff that I left me with a sense of pride, leaving the institution, that I had an impact as a student leader. That's something I can look to afterwards and say, you know what? After my 4 years as a student, this is something concrete that I left behind that I'm proud of. So I encourage everybody to kind of look at those things that you want to do and, work towards making that change on whatever campus you attend. If that's Mount A, you'll see me, you'll know me. I'm here. I'm very much involved in, the campus community. And if you have questions or you're kind of curious about what life is like in this place, I'd love to talk with you afterwards, but I'll leave you with this. Any attempt to describe a social process as complex as leadership inevitably makes it seem more orderly than it is. Leadership is not tidy. Decisions are made and then revised or reversed. Misunderstandings are frequent. Inconsistency inevitable. Achieving a goal may simply make the next goal more urgent. Inside every solution are the seeds of new problems, and most of the time things are out of hand. No leader enjoys that reality, but every leader knows it. So, okay, it sounds a little depressing. And as much as it can feel depressing, but I think it's, it highlights that this leadership is a process. It's not a simple directive, point A to point B. Having this kind of perspective, it really allows you to place situations within that larger context and knowing that, okay, it might not have worked this time, but that's okay. The next time we'll hone it a little bit and we'll refine it a bit. So if you be patient, you be strategic, and then you are ever ready when you hear that door or when you know that that opportunity is knocking, that you're ready to break down the door. And that's kind of what it's all about, is being prepared when the time comes. And you get a lot of that preparation through the act of doing it. So make no mistake, campus leadership requires sacrifice and a willingness to just keep going. But I know that all of you are able to do that and you possess that within yourselves. So I'd just say, try to take some of this advice that I've shared with you. And, if you're interested in the kind of concept of leadership, maybe take that leadership course at university, talk to other leaders that in your community, in your school, at your campus. There's a lot you can learn from all of them. So you're the architects of your own future. What will you design? That's the big question for you. In solidarity and with servitude, I thank you. I am an open book. If you do have any questions, for those who are still here viewing with me, we're coming right up at the end of time, but we have about 5 minutes maybe left if there were any questions. If not, my email is pretty easy. If you can remember my first name, curtis@mta.ca, that will come right to me. And whether it's a question about Mount A or you have some big kind of cool project goal in mind and you just want some advice on it, hey, I'll do my best, to assist you, because that's why I do my job and why I love it. Is I love working with students and trying to see you all reach your goals. That's something that I also take great fulfillment in, and why I choose to kind of work in this type of role and position. So I do hope that helps. I see I got a couple claps along the way. Good. That's a good motivator. Any other questions for the 6 still here remaining? Anybody have anything that they want to ask? So to scholarship decisions at Mount A. So ultimately, March 1st being that deadline. You might get a preliminary scholarship just based on your academic average. Know that that's not your final scholarship. We release our final financial aid and scholarship packages. You typically in mid-April, maybe anywhere from April 10th to kind of April 15th. So what happens once all the students apply and submit their mid-year transcripts after that March 1st? We really use all the activities on your application form. So the more detailed you can be on your application form by telling us about literally everything. I always say nothing's too trivial. Maybe you babysit a younger sibling, or maybe you helped your teacher back in grade 10 for an hour. That might be the little activity on top of your other things that bumps you up for an extra $1,000 per year or gets you shortlisted for that major award. So I just say nothing's too trivial. Put it down. Tell us all about yourself. It's the one opportunity when you're applying for scholarships where you don't have to be shy to brag. That's what we want to hear. So after that, we do our best to assess all the students from across the globe, which is not always an easy task, but it is our favorite time of year because we actually get to know you as people, what actually motivates you, what gets you out of bed in the morning, as opposed to just grades on a piece of paper, which don't always tell you a whole lot about an individual. So yeah, it takes us about a full month to go through those whole assessments. And when we do, that's when you're going to kind of get students that will be shortlisted for the designated or major awards, students that maybe get enhanced entrance scholarships. If you have demonstrated financial need, you can qualify for bursaries or kind of need-based scholarships. And you need to fill out an entrance bursary to kind of identify that financial need. And for Canadian students, think if you're going to apply for a student loan, you should also apply for a bursary. The average required to get into the school. So again, this is kind of one of those funny misconceptions that it's incredibly difficult. You have to have, the super high average to get into, Canadian universities. That's not always the case. If you want to get a scholarship, again, that's a bit where it becomes more competitive. 80% is the minimum average needed in your best 5 academic courses to earn a scholarship at Mount A. The better that academic average becomes, all the way up to 100% average, it just means your scholarship will be stronger the better your average is. But the minimum grade we would need in any course to get considered for admission is a 65%. It's not incredibly high. Now, do I believe a 65% is preparing you well for the rigor of, Mount Allison? No, I would encourage students to really strive for more than the minimum. And the minimum doesn't even always guarantee you admission, but generally, sometimes it's maybe one course. You've done swimmingly in all of your courses, but you end up with that 65% in pre-cal and you're applying to a Bachelor of Arts program. We're not necessarily going to hold that against you. So always try to push yourself and do as best as you can in all of your courses. But, if there is that one course that gets the best of you, or a few, contact us. We're also easy to get in touch with admissions, and we'll review your transcript and give you an idea of what you need to do. Some students will even do a summer school course because they didn't get that 65 in one course, and then they needed to do a course. As long as you can show us that you're enrolled in that course, upgrading, and you finish it before the fall term, then, you still have that ability to get admitted. So, but I know I'm probably speaking with a lot of higher achievers than that. So I'd say push yourselves, try to get up into those 90 plus range. That's where the average of Mount Allison students is coming in. It's typically around 86 or 87% when you look at all of your peers. So I think that's pretty much my time. I don't see any other questions. So thank you again. To everybody who's stuck with me for the whole time. I hope you're able to take in some of the other sessions and that you've asked good questions and got some good information from this today. I certainly have appreciated your audience.